Okay, this is Batman, but the 1989 version. Let's watch the trailer.
Vicky Vale.
Bruce Wayne.
And what do you do for a living?
Lieutenant, is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City?
Nice outfit.
You look fine.
I didn't ask. I have given a name to my pain.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Where did you get those wonderful toys?
My life is really complex.
Winged freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
Oh my goodness, talk about a trip down memory lane. 1989, Roger. Yes, please tell me, where were you? What did you do?
Well, do you know what? This film, I loved it, and I got swept up in the hype in the lead up to its release. I think we're going to talk a lot more about that. It was called Batmania, and everybody was talking about Batman. Everybody wanted Batman logo T-shirts. They all even wanted to get their Batman logo shaved into their hair and that sort of thing. So I was swept up by this, and I went to see Batman the night before I was going on a works trip to Paris. And we went to see the Batman at the cinema in Lancaster, which is where I was living at the time. Absolutely loved the film so much. We talked about it all the way on the bus because it was a bus trip. We went to Paris, so it took us like the best part of a day to get to Paris. So everybody was talking about Batman, and do you know what we did when we got to Paris? We went to see it again in a Paris cinema, and of course it was in English, and it had been it had French subtitles at the bottom, so of course it didn't really matter. And I think I'm right in saying that we even were allowed to drink a glass of beer in the French cinema when we were watching Batman. But what a good film. And I can't remember very many films that I've seen twice in almost like successive evenings. I thought it was so much good stuff about it. It was a lot darker than the TV series that everybody remembers from the 60s. That film with Adam, that TV series with Adam West, and it was quite camp, wasn't it? It was quite bright. It was quite colourful. But I thought this was a lot darker, but it still had that good versus evil vibe going on about it. The gadgets were incredible. Everybody loved the gadgets. Kim Basinger was the lead lady actor and the love interest for Bruce Wayne in the film. And of course, at the time, Kim Basinger was, real Premier League actress. I think everybody of my age group in the 80s fancied her like mad as well. Am I even allowed to say that? But yeah, everybody thought Kim Basinger was just fantastic, and Jack Nicholson, was just incredible as the Joker. I mean, yeah, he was chewing the scenery like he often does, but he's just got a way of chewing the scenery and making it unbelievable. And some of his lines, I have made a name for my pain, and there's a winged freak terrorizing the city, but wait till they get a load of me. All of those quotes were just fantastic. What an incredible film, and massive memories. And I think because I saw it twice in Lancaster and then in Paris, just as indelibly sort of put it into my memory.
Yeah, and no, so 89, so we are leaving the 80s and we're going to start to get into the 90s, but this still felt like the 80s, and you reference to Batmania, and we will talk about the marketing in a moment. But for me, what was unique as an experience and the whole event around it, I mean, that took over the summer. There were other films in 1989, some very, very good one out there, but the summer of 1989 was just taken over in a good way, because people got behind it by this movie Batman. And what was interesting is, so I was living in Bordeaux at the time. I was 2 years away from leaving Bordeaux to come and live in the UK. I saw it twice as well. Now, with my friends, we saw documentaries on TV of what was happening with the premieres in the US, where people were dressed as Batman or the Joker. And we thought that would be a very good idea to do so. So imagine the group of 6 or 7 of us. And actually, I turned up dressed as a Joker together with one of my friends, and the others had bottled out. But so pretty much did everybody else in the cinema. So this was not embarrassing at all, Roger, to be the only people dressed as a Joker. We went also with the whole white face and the lipstick and everything. We went for it and just sat there feeling very hot because actually that makeup was drying. So the reason why I went to see it twice, because the first time I couldn't enjoy the movie because of all the makeup and the very uncomfortable costume I'd hired to dress like the Joker, thinking that would be doing like the US. And of course, this is a French market. So the second time, I enjoyed it much, much better. For me as well, the highlight, which we're going to talk in a moment, was to see and hear the song of my hero, Prince, on the big screen. And that was something that I was looking forward to. But just to give you a bit of a segue into the Batman marketing, that Batman logo or stamp or mark, when they went for the black and gold, was everywhere, Roger. Do you remember? You can look around at bus stops, but the sides of buses. It was on packaging. You could buy toys, fruits. You could buy shirts, Walkmans. Everything had that dark bat symbol. Although my poor mother was very confused because she saw it and came back home saying, "Why do we have a mouth posted everywhere around town?" And I said, "No, it's not a mouth, Mum, it's a bat." So it was lost on some people, bless her. So you mentioned the term Batmania. Why do you think it has been used in that way?
Because everybody was going absolutely batty about Batman. I mean, doing the research for this particular segment, it was absolutely fascinating because it's a long time ago, but there's so much information out there about it because it literally was a massive, massive event. An event. It was probably one of the first event films, and it's interesting when you go back. There was a lot of people thought that this was going to be a complete flop.
Yeah.
They thought it was going to be a complete flop. Now, again, people remember the 1960s series. They had a lot of affection for it, but it was quite camp. It was very light-hearted, almost like a live action cartoon. It always had when they punch people, it would go thwack up on the screen, and the sound effects. It really was quite cheesy, and I guess people maybe thought that it was going to be like that, and that it was not going to be a box office success. But of course, the filmmakers had based it more around the Dark Knight books by Frank Miller. Much darker film, a much darker story set in sort of the equivalent of New York, and at the time New York was quite a scary place to live. Crime was high. It was before they sort of got a grip on the crime wave in New York, and a lot of people associated themselves with it. But I think the genius of how the filmmakers managed to create this Batmania was playing upon the memories that people had of that 1960s TV series. And a lot of the memories beyond the campness of it was that bat logo that used to shine into the sky when Commissioner Gordon needed help from Batman. And this is probably the first film which was ever marketed around the concept purely of a logo. Now, none of the posters had Batman himself in it, or the city, or the Joker. It was purely the logo. Now, nowadays, That is an established film marketing technique. We've seen it with Jurassic Park, to name another one. There's a specific logo that people recognize. But this was genuinely one of the first films built specifically around a logo. And I think the glorious simplicity of it, it was the logo and then 23rd of June. That was it. The logo and then 23rd of June. And as you said, it was everywhere. And it became so recognizable that people wanted it on T-shirts. They wanted it on their hair. People were having it shaved into their head. And it just took off. And the merchandising with the logo just took off, and everybody wanted T-shirts. They had, really expensive denim jackets, really expensive leather jackets with this logo on it. And before you knew it, it just became a snowball effect, and it almost like took over the world. And that's why they call it Batmania, because literally everybody wanted something with this logo on it.
And to your point about the simplicity, we know now through research that Tim Burton in particular went through hundreds and hundreds of examples and kind of different tests with the poster. And I would imagine some of them would have been very complicated. Maybe they were doing the old-fashioned, let's show all the actors and let's put Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson on. Because to your point, I suppose the trailer did serve that purpose, but there was not the usual of listing all the A-listers, making sure that you go and see the movie because of Michael Keaton, even though you don't know a thing about Batman. They didn't go there at all. And I remember when I used to buy film magazine, I'm sure you did as well, and I literally pleaded the newsagent to keep the Batman poster they had on the back of their wall, and offered to pay for it because I wanted it in my bedroom. That was kind of the level. People used to steal posters from the sides of bus stops and so on for themselves. It was just that element of having to own something that was part of the event. And as you heard a moment ago, then only two of us was dressed as the Joker, thinking we were back in the US. The one thing I wanted to mention to you then is this idea of the merchandise. And people make sometimes correlation between Star Wars, even Jaws and all the others. The big difference here is that it was more of a post-event mania with Star Wars and Jaws and Jurassic Park. With Batman, it was a pre-launch mania where the merchandise was being purchased before the movie had been seen by anybody, whereas typically it happens after.
Yeah, and again, the merchandising part of this is really fascinating. You're absolutely right. Star Wars created this whole genre of toys, didn't it? The Star Wars figures, the models of TIE fighters and Imperial Star Destroyers, and all of that people wanted to buy. And a lot of these film studios thought that was the start of a trend. And that from Star Wars onwards, every movie would just create a load of merchandise. But it didn't, did it? Because we saw films like E.T. in 1982, we saw Gremlins in 1984, Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones, all of those films of the 80s, which you would have expected to have created a merchandising rush, didn't. And I think that is exactly why, because of what you've said, is that it was all post. It all came after Star Wars, and they didn't think enough about creating the demand and the desire for the merchandise within those films that followed Star Wars, whereas the makers of Batman absolutely had those gadgets and the merchandise in their heads as they were putting it together. So they were leaking all of these images of the Batmobile and this, that, and the other well in advance, and doing the deals to get this merchandise out there, as you say, before the film. And in addition to people wanting the T-shirts and wanting these things stenciled into their heads, they were wanting to buy, the Bat plane. They were wanting to buy the figures. They were wanting to buy the Batmobile before the film had even come out. And I think that not only were they thinking about like you've said, but they were also thinking, as the Star Wars was, after. And they were very careful that quite a lot of the tech in the film, like the Batmobile, they were specific that they didn't want the Batmobile to get blown up or damaged in any way in the film, because they wanted it to survive so that people would then think, I've just got to have this. It's indestructible. I'm going to go and buy it. So you got people buying it before the film, people buying it after the film. And it just went absolutely, it just added to this whole mania thing. People wanted all of this stuff. So, the licensing arm of the film production company, there was over 300 different items of Batman stuff, from trading cars to the T-shirts to the models of the aeroplane to the models of the Batmobile. It was a merchandising paradise, and it really did. It was that was the Batman merchandising summer, and it's a lesson in merchandising utopia, I guess.
Oh, completely. Now, one that has never been repeated ever since, because in fact, whilst they could afford it and it helped, the movie and to be a global success, there was also waste, and eventually there was items that people didn't want to buy, or they were produced into greater volume. So it's why, in a way, Roger, this really is a moment in time in film history, because it was never repeated. Actually, if anything, Warner Brothers, when we talked about Harry Potter, went the other way, which is to be actually much more exclusive about what they did. What was interesting, therefore, by the media coverage, because it is a big part of film marketing, there was almost two storylines. There was the movie itself and the history around the graphic novel and so on. And there was the Batmania, where the reporters who couldn't understand what on earth was going on. So there were the two forces at hand. The one thing that they did, so not only do you have all that going on, but just in case people are not paying attention enough to Batman the movie, then they, of course, invite one of the most famous artist in the world, certainly in the 80s and 90s, Prince, who was signed to Warner Brothers record label. Prince released the Batman album. The Bat Dance was number one pretty much in every countries I can think of, and even had other titles. Of the 9 tracks you have on the album, 4 to 5 of those were released as singles. So there was this constant ambience as well from the music of Prince playing on radios. There were remixes, there was B-sides playing on radio, because that's what we had to. And of course, we used to listen to the Batman cassette on our Walkmans. And if you've been lucky to buy the Sony Walkman with the Batman logo, there you were really it. Quick little surprise for you. I've mentioned on this show many times how much I love Prince's work. Well, I can show you my 1989 Prince Batman LP just for you guys. And they have respected, as you can see, the logo. That's all you see on the front cover. And on the back, what they've done is list the tracks as if they are the characters in a film. You have the closing credits at the bottom, and you have all the, in purple now, because of course this Prince has to be purple. You have all the credits for the directors, the filmmakers, and so on. So the Batman album was also creating the sense of event. Now, the movie and the film is, of course, done by music composer Danny Elfman, which is really works with Tim Burton the same way Spielberg works with John Williams. What was very disappointing from the media's point of view, they created a fake war between Danny Elfman and Prince. And knowing enough about music composers, they probably had mutual respect for each other and probably know each other well. But you had the battle of the artists. Do you like Danny Elfman's music score, or do you prefer Prince kind of LP? I suppose it is part of the many PR stunts. You could have a look at it, but we can't underestimate the power of the music choosing an artist. The only one that I can think of that's done it like that is almost the Bond franchise.
Yeah, absolutely right. The whole thing was it was an absolute joy to research, and again, I suppose on the we've now know that the most up to date version of Batman, the Batman. I've heard mixed reviews about it. It's 3 hours long. People say there's only 2 scenes in daylight in the entire 3 hours. It's a bit dark, very dark. I mean, it's a lot. It probably makes the 1989 Batman now look as camp as the It made the 60s series look like. But if you want to find out more about Batmania and how this film became so successful as a result of all this merchandise, as a result of the logo branding and the logo marketing. There's so much material out there on the internet to find out and to research this. Videos on YouTube, articles. And one of the best headlines I saw as I was researching this came from an article. The headline was Batmania, a triumph of shameless hype. And that is exactly how this film became so successful. It was a triumph of shameless hype.
Thank you so much, Roger. It's been absolutely delightful to cast my mind back to a much younger self. I was 20 in 1989, still studying, finishing off, just making my way to move to the UK, and having a wonderful summer with my friends. And looking back now, even knowing how embarrassing I felt dressed as the Joker, I reckon I would still do it. Actually, I didn't even learn my lessons because when my pal Dominic and I went to see Prince in concert a year later, the Batman tour, we did it again anyway. So, glutton for punishment. It's been amazing. This has been number 70, Roger. It felt a very special episode because of looking back at all the hard work, but also all the value we've been giving out there. The feedback from our audience is just delightful. Now, everyone, please leave your comments and suggestions in the usual places. Until the next time, make sure your marketing is done right. I was Pascal Fintoni, and he was Roger Edgeworth.